Hi there. A week or so ago, an old shooting friend of mine, Mac, Rod McKinley, who used to actually work in the gun shop and was the gunsmith for most of my pistols, passed on a magazine to me. I hadn't read a gun magazine for quite a while, and I flicked through it. I didn't actually read the articles in detail, but the pictures were amazing, and my eyes were caught by some of the new pistols in there. And seeing these new designs, it got me thinking that the pistols that I had in my collection when we had to hand our weapons in the UK due to Tony Blair, and how much the pistols in that magazine are an improvement, if any, over the pistols I had back then. So here's what I handed in back in '97. I did acquire a second Colt, a Series 70, which came with decent extended safety. The finish was very good, and I put high visibility adjustable sights on that. And the reason I needed the two pistols was sometimes if you were having work done on a pistol and it went away to the shop, it could take a while. And one that sticks in my mind, I sent my original Colt away. There was a chap down in Dorset, a gunsmith in Dorset, who was advertising having tritium inserts put into your sights front and rear. And I sent my pistol off to him. And it took just on a year, and when the pistol came back, the sights were no different. He put these tritiums in, but they didn't actually work. They just were dead dots. So all during the time he had that pistol, I was shooting the Series 70. That gunsmith actually died a short while later, so it was kind of revenge is sweet. Nowadays, Trijicon and various other vendors do some very good front sight inserts, and I would have them if I was starting again. I think they're useful, and they certainly don't detract in any way, and that's what I would be choosing now. So just in case you think my handgun choices were frozen in 1911, the next one I want to talk about is a very modern design, very futuristic in some ways, and that's the Heckler & Koch P7M8. So I just want to chat really about those pistols, or some of them, and why I selected them, any modifications, and then we'll sum up by talking about the pistols that are now available that might be somewhat preferential to those, if at all. So I'll first talk about my original Colt 45 1911. Picked up a Colt influenced by the writings of Colonel Cooper. This was in early 1976. The pistol that I bought came from a chap who was an armourer in the army, and it was a 1936 between the wars commercial model. Now, this pistol shot well for slow fire, but what I was involved in was what was known as combat shooting at the time, and for that there were a certain number of modifications it needed. So I'll go over those modifications in detail. So as you can see from that picture, I've outlined the main modifications that I did, and started off with high visibility fixed sights. Now, the sights that came with most semi-autos at the time were rather tiny. They were fine for bullseye shooting, but no good for fast acquisition under various light conditions. So they the first thing that I considered doing was replacing the existing sights with some other type of much more visible sights, and I chose fixed sights, ones that would fit the existing dovetail. The rear sight was an MMC fixed sight, and the front sight was a custom made ramp. So these sights were then did allow for much better visibility when you were shooting at speed. The next item was to extend the safety catch. Now, the designers of the pistols didn't realize that the safety catch was part of the firing stroke. So as you're presenting the weapon onto target, it's in a safe condition, and the safety has to be taken off at some stage while you maintain a consistent grip on the weapon. And this is done by wiping it down with the thumb. And to do this, the safety catch needs to be somewhat larger than was designed by Browning. So the catch I got was a custom model. It extends slightly outwards and forwards. The Colt existing one was really a little bit awkward to reach, and the Browning on the iPower 35 was even worse. So that was one of the things that we did, was to put the extended safety catch on. Next thing was to polish up the feed ramp and a little bit of throating to the chamber. This may not have been necessary with all pistols, depending on what ammunition you were using. On my particular 45, excuse me, on all pistols really, the number one consideration is reliability. It's got to feed reliably. So what a lot of us did was have some work done on the feed ramp so it would reliably feed various types of ammo. And the one that we kind of tested everything with was the Spear 200 grain flying ashtray hollow point. If it would feed the Spear, it would probably feed anything. So that was the thought. Even though mostly we were shooting lead semi-wad cutters, the old Hensley and Gibbs, the ability to shoot different types of ammunition, particularly some of the hollow points, was a very, very desirable factor. Then we come to the finish of the weapon. The pistol as I bought it was blued and it had been worn quite a bit. So I decided to have the slide refinished in a black finish, which was still a bluing process at the time, and the frame done with industrial hard chrome. This gave it a two-tone finish, as you can see in the pictures I've posted of the weapon, which was very similar to a pistol called a Packmeyer Special, and one had been presented to Ray Chapman. It was on, it was in a Guns and Ammo magazine, and we all looked at it and coveted it. It looked really well, but apart from the aesthetics, the practical aspect was the hard chrome's more resistant to perspiration. It also was kind of a slippery finish, so it aided reliability, and obviously protected from the protected also the internals from corrosion. So that was a very desirable thing. Now, the finish is an area in which great advances have been made, but in '97 most of the finishes were available. Things like NP3 and Black Tea were available. I just hadn't got round to having them done. Probably I would have had some of my weapons finished in something like Black Tea, had we still been allowed to keep them. Grips. I tried numerous types of grips, Herret's grips, Rogers plastic grips, which were very, very good, very ergonomic design, from Bill Rogers, the noted instructor, and these stocks by Jean Saint-Henri, which were very, very elegant. But I eventually settled, and for all of the later years used these grips or stocks, which were marketed by Bianchi but actually made by Packman, and they had built-in finger grooves on the front strap which fitted my hand perfectly and aided control of the weapon. Being rubber, they were non-slip in the hand under conditions of sweat, etc. I did acquire a second Colt, a Series 70, which came with decent extended safety. The finish was very good, and I put high visibility adjustable sights on that. And the reason I needed the two pistols was sometimes if you were having work done on a pistol and it went away to the shop, it could take a while. And one that sticks in my mind, I sent my original Colt away. There was a chap down in Dorset, a gunsmith in Dorset, who was advertising having tritium inserts put into your sights front and rear. And I sent my pistol off to him, and it took just on a year. And when the pistol came back, the sights were no different. He put these tritiums in, but they didn't actually work. They just were dead dots. So all during the time he had that pistol, I was shooting the Series 70. That gunsmith actually died a short while later. So it was kind of a revenge is sweet. Nowadays, Trijicon and various other vendors do some very, very good front sight inserts, and I would have them if I was starting again. I think they're useful, and they certainly don't detract in any way, and that's what I would be choosing now. So just in case you think my handgun choices were frozen in 1911, the next one I want to talk about is a very modern design, very futuristic in some ways, and that's the Heckler & Koch P7M8. This pistol was developed from the PSP, which was submitted to the German pistol trials in 1974 for the German to adopt a German police pistol. In the event, no one pistol was selected. There were designs from SIG, Walther, etc., which were, and the Heckler design was adopted by some states in Germany, so some of the Länder, as the P7. It was then modified, and there was the P7 M8, which came out and had various modifications, and then you could also have the M13, which was larger capacity. I chose the M8, and there was really no modifications needed to this weapon. It had brilliant sights, fed, and had a decent finish, although Heckler did come out with a different finish for some of its other pistols later on, called the Hostile Environment finish. I just wish they'd put it on the P7 as well, which was their most expensive pistol, but they didn't. The only drawback I'd say to the P7 was it heated up. If you were firing rapidly, going through several magazines, the area around the gas chamber heated up a lot. And I remember shooting on a range in the desert, doing that. We were doing multiple magazine dumps, and I used to have to lay the pistol down on a rock while I was patching the target to try and get it to cool somewhat. Of course, in police service, that's probably not regarded as much of a drawback, but when you're doing a lot of training, it certainly was. They did have a plastic heat shield that obviated the problem to a slight extent, but it still did occur. The thing about the P7, it was very easy to shoot accurately. I used to demonstrate headshot pairs that used to be touching at speed on courses, and the guys would give me pats on the back until I pointed out that they could do the same, and I'd let them try it, and they all could. It's the pistol. I remember I was on a course that was presented by Louis Auerbach in the United States, and he had a unique moving target system where there was a hostage, and the bad guy target, it was pulled by one of the range staff at random, and you had one shot, and out of the whole class of about 20 people, there was only 2 of us made that headshot, myself and Manny Capelson. Manny made it because he's an excellent shooter, and I made it because I was shooting the P7. I would really select the P7 for any kind of covert carriage, particularly in things like VIP protection. It really is a great design, and in many ways it's my favorite pistol. Then we come to the Glock. I first picked up a Glock. It was the first one imported into the UK at the show at Bisley, and I wasn't impressed. It didn't have any kind of checkering on it at all, and it was unloaded on the trade stand, and it felt clumsy in the hand. And most of the comments about it weren't too favourable in the press. It was too radical for most people. Sometime later, I got to shoot a 19. They'd launched the 19 in the United States. One of the chaps had it. I tried it, fitted my hand perfect, or my hands perfectly. I found it great to shoot. The trigger was no problem. A lot of people with a background shooting the Colt, for example, didn't like the Glock trigger. I never found it a problem. I found I could shoot it. And the finish on it, that tenor finish, is superb. It's one of the best finishes on any handgun. The only thing with the Glock, and this applies right up to the present day, is you have to replace the sights. It comes with plastic sights for some reason. I don't know why they didn't put metal sights on the Glock out of the box. So that's one thing you need to do. Okay, and then I did own several other pistols, as you saw in the original photograph on this video, but I'll finish by talking about the SIG 228. Then we come to the Glock. I first picked up a Glock. It was the first one imported into the UK at the show at Bisley, and I wasn't impressed. It didn't have any kind of checkering on it at all, and it was unloaded on the trade stand, and it felt clumsy in the hand. And most of the comments about it weren't too favourable in the press. It was too radical for most people. Sometime later I got to shoot a 19. They'd launched the 19 in the United States. One of the chaps had it. I tried it, fitted my hand perfect, or my hands perfectly. I found it great to shoot. The trigger was no problem. A lot of people with a background shooting the Colt, for example, didn't like the Glock trigger. I never found it a problem. I found I could shoot it. And the finish on it, that tenor finish, is superb. It's one of the best finishes on any handgun. The only thing with the Glock, and this applies right up to the present day, is you have to replace the sights. It comes with plastic sights for some reason. I don't know why they didn't put metal sights on the Glock out of the box. So that's one thing you need to do. Okay, and then I did own several other pistols, as you saw in the original photograph on this video, but I'll finish by talking about the SIG 228. Now, the reason I started or I bought a SIG was that we were encountering so many of them on courses, and for example, so many of the federal agencies were using that I thought I might as well be familiar with it. And when I bought it, I was rather underwhelmed by how it was made. Aluminium frame, okay, that's all right, but the slide was oppressing, and when you compare it with something like the Colt, I was, as I say, rather underwhelmed. If you compare it with the Glock, the slide on the Glock, which is a very solid steel slide, really there's no comparison, and yet the SIG 228 was much more expensive than the Glock, and I just couldn't see where the extra money was unless it was just in the name SIG. However, shooting it, I enjoyed it. I always enjoyed shooting the SIG. Again, a lot of people did not like the transition from double action to single action. Because I'd started out on revolvers, I didn't really have a problem with double action, and the transition, all I can say is I didn't really find it a problem, and everything else on the SIG I enjoyed a lot. At one stage, I bought a rubber. They called it a Glock sock. I put it on the Glock, didn't like it on the Glock. Put it on the SIG, tried it for a bit, didn't like it on that either. So both the Glock and the SIG, grip-wise, I never messed around at all with them, and did a lot of shooting with both. One thing I would say about overall with all the pistols, the 45, if we take the stopping power discussion out of the equation, the 45 is a very nice round because it's low pressure, and it's very, very easy on the actual weapon. I shot many thousands. I've no idea how many thousand rounds I shot. I did start logging the rounds through all my pistols, but it was only after I'd already fired most. I'd finished doing competitions, and I'd fired most of the rounds through the Colt by then anyway. But after that, I still fired probably 20,000 rounds through that Colt, and no signs of wear. Very, very forgiving round, the Colt. And as reloaders, we used to reload our ammo. The Colt cases, you could reload them till the head stamps were no longer visible. So that was always nice. So just going over the pistols that we saw in the magazine and the ones that I gave up in '97. How much development has taken place. Now, okay, I modified my Colt, but the Series 70 came with those modifications. So in '97, you could buy out of the box the well-made Colt with the necessary modifications. So there was no advantage there. So, and some of the weapons since are not as well made as the original Colts. The Glock, my Glock 19, was from the original series. They're on the 5th generation now, but how much difference is it really? The main difference in some of the weapons now is the addition of light rails to add some sort of flashlight to the weapon, which a weapon mounted light to me is not an advantage. It's something we will talk about in a future program, no doubt. The SIG, there's numerous new SIGs on the market. I haven't shot them. People rave about them. How much better they are than the 228. They did obviously come up with the 229, which is the forged steel slide, the solid slide, which would be an improvement. So that would be something, particularly if you're going to do a lot of shooting. 45 and 9mm, I never went to 40, and that's kind of biting the dust now. Most of the big agencies have gone away from it and gone back to the 9. The 357 SIG, again, I wouldn't be a fan of that. The air marshals who used it, they've now gone to the 9mm, and I think that's a good thing. So really, I would be happy with my collection if I was still shooting them now. There's nothing really that I see that I'd really drool over and kind of cover to any great extent. I probably would try out the new SIGs, and I might be won over by them. Hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane.